when you look at what is going on now in the field of art, and more specifically in the field of art involving photography, you see very clearly a new connection, a new combination between the tableau and the document. It is something absolutely specific of our time, of contemporary art. It's something you can see some little antecedents in the past, but it happens now. It has been, this connection, this combination has been developed for maybe 20 years, not more. It is something which should be examined very carefully. But it's quite complex, because on one hand you have the tableau, on the other hand you have the document. And so now I hope you are a little bit clearer about the tableau. But about the document, I suppose that you are not very clear. And I cannot do about the document what I did about the tableau, because it would be too long. But just one or two indications. When we talk about the document, we are most of the time in a big mess, because we have three ideas coming together. The idea of documentation, the idea of archive, and at the end, the idea of the document. The idea of the document is is related most of the time with documentation or with the archive. But the document has also a lot to do with the work of art. So when you talk about the document, you talk about something which is related to three different things. Documentation, archive, and work. And the work of art. Why? Because, when you say why, then all the difficulties stop. Documentation is a corpus of documents. Documentation is about many documents, at least several documents. Documentation is about the content of the document. It's about several documents first, and second, it's about the content of the document. It's about the information produced by the documents, or through the documents, or from the documents. Documentation is what you use to develop a discourse or an investigation. Okay? No problem? Good. What is an archive? An archive is a kind of documentation, but it's more, when you talk about an archive, you talk about a corpus of documents, a set of documents, once more, but which is specific, and which is not directly linked to an investigation or a discourse. The archive can exist and be without any use. Documentation, implies the idea of use. You don't have documentation which is not used, which is not for use. The archive is just about keeping things. The archive is, the idea of archive is close to the idea of collection in that way. or the idea of found. The difference between found and collection in the vocabulary of art, as you probably know, is that a found is not built, a collection is built. An archive is closer, so it's quite close to the idea of found or collection. In that sense, that it is a corpus, a real corpus, a material corpus of documents. The idea of archive in the vocabulary of contemporary art is very obsessive now. Everybody talks about the archive, but it's recent. There are, I don't know any work dealing with the idea of archive before conceptual art. If you can find any art dealing with this idea before conceptual art, tell me, I'm very interested to learn. I never found any. In an archive, you have many documents, of course. They are more or less interesting. Some are fascinating. And some documents are very heavy. Some documents are like jewels, historical jewels. Some documents can be very valuable in any sense, even in financial sense. A letter from a very famous person. I mean, you imagine if we had a letter about, I don't know, I would have to invent an example, but I mean a letter where, I don't know, what example could I find? You know, something exceptional, you know, I mean a letter announcing the Third World War, I mean, no, this is not a document because it would be, no, I mean, I don't know, something exceptional. You imagine it's very valuable, this document. And also, a document is singular. That's something very paradoxical. But every art historian knows about that. I mean, every historian in general and every art historian in particular knows that document is a singular thing. When you discover a rich document, you have joy. You feel a joy, which is not so different from discovering a work of art. Because a document, a very rich document, a very specific document, is in a way close to the singularity of the work of art. So you see that the document is very different from the archive or from the documentation. Because when you have the idea of documentation or archive, you don't have this idea of the singular document. And in the history of modern art, this idea of the document as something singular artifact, something very specific, something even odd or strange, is very important. Think of the magazine, the French magazine called Document. There was a show in London about this magazine a few years ago, which was an interesting show, I think. And there is a book, a catalogue about this show. So you can look at it. There was a magazine called Document, published in France in the years 29, 30, 31. And it was published by Georges Bataille and Karl Einstein. Karl Einstein is always forgotten. Big mistake. Anyway, even in that show he was forgotten. Big mistake, big mistake. It's not only the magazine of Georges Bataille, it's also the magazine of Karl Einstein. Anyway, this magazine is fantastic. Look at it, and it's really about producing documents. And it's after, you see, it was published in the late 20s. Late 20s, so at least 5 years after the first manifest of surrealism, which was published in 24. So it's a magazine which is in a way in in the track, you can put it like that, of surrealism in the movement, in the path. It's much better, in the path of surrealism. It's not a surrealistic magazine because Bataille was, and Karlenstein were not involved in surrealism, and they were very different from André Breton. But it's in the path of surrealism. And a key idea in surrealism is precisely that one, to use documents as alternatives to works of art. But as alternatives to works of art, which means that the document is close to the work of art. It can be compared to the work of art. And so a good, nice, surprising document. Do we have the document by commented by Rainer Banham? Shit. It's a pity because you will see. If I forget, you have to remind me when we shall go to Hamilton that here in this country you had a very interesting kind of movement. It was not really a movement, like surrealism, called the independent group, which was really independent group, which was related to the Institute of Contemporary Arts. And Hamilton was involved in this kind of movement. And it's very interesting because there was in this movement, because they were using images, documents a lot in their shows and so on, and strange documents, and and producing this kind of environments of documents. They were in this trend. And among these people, there was another one called Rainer Banham, who is very interesting. Did you read Banham a little bit? You don't know who is Banham? Rainer Banham?
Oh, Rainer Banham?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Of course.
Yes.
You know Rainer Banham. No? No, I would like to feel a little bit what is... do you know Rainer Banham? Have you heard his name? Yes? No? No? Yes? Yes, yes. So,
He's not very well known now.
No, really? I think he's very interesting. And he wrote one of the most amazing, beautiful texts on the photographical document in a very post-realistic way. It is a fascinating text. It is in the catalogue of the show on the independent group. You will find it very easily. It's a beautiful text by Banham. Banham is very interesting. No, he's very interesting about brutalism, about architecture, mainly urbanism. He is the one who invented the idea of the revolution of the container. He is the inventor of this concept, the revolution of the container in '67. He is also the one who was involved in the independent group and who dealt with this kind of imagery, of technical imagery, but using this imagery in the as documents, surrealistic documents. Anyway, I have to proceed yet. So we shall go back to this a little bit. So the document has this kind of singularity, okay? And you have the surrealistic document, which is fundamentally about surprise. Voilà. The surrealistic document is about surprise. It's an experience of being surprised. It's close to a concept which invented by the surrealists, which is l'objet trouvé. L'objet trouvé. I don't translate because it should not be translated. It has to be kept in French. L'objet trouvé. No, yes, because when you keep this kind of words, you know, in the, you see, you mean that they have an origin. You can also say trouvaille, yes. Trouvaille, objet trouvé, and trouvaille, trouvaille. Every painting, every work of art can be a document. Every work of art can be considered as a document about culture or society or, I don't know, anything else. You can always look at a painting as a document. And you can always look at a painting to find in the painting an information about, I don't know. You look, for example, at a painting by Rubens, and it's a document about hunting. Well, that's a good example. Huh? Because he made a lot of pictures dealing with that. And so you don't look at the painting as a painting by Rubens, you look at it as a document about hunting. So it's always possible. Okay. Every document, every painting, every work of art, excuse me, can be maybe a document of culture. Okay. The reverse is not true, of course. But some works of art are documents in themselves, were produced as documents, or have the quality of a document. Because many works of art have were not produced with the idea of giving information, of making a document. Here, a good example of a tableau. You know it. I choose a very famous one to show you that it is quite central in the history of painting. You have a perfect example of a tableau which has, in the opinion of Turner, which was produced by Turner and which was supposed, in the opinion of Turner, to convey a documentary value, a documentary content. Okay? And you get it at once in the title. Huh? So you have the title on the screen. Huh? And this, and for Turner, it's very clear. When he paints such a tableau, it's about what he experienced. And he says it. I was there. I saw it. He is interpreting what he experienced. The painting is a record and an interpretation of an experience. It's why I say document d'expérience. Document of experience. The painting is a document of experience. But it's also a document of what is that experience? It's also an experience by a painter. When Turner had that experience of a storm, he had this experience as a painter, not as a simple person, normal, let's put it, person, as a painter. Which means that he saw things in the storm which were related to his idea of painting. So, the tableau is a document of experience of the painter. And the painting is a document of experience of the painter. So there is something circular. And the tableau is also, as a document, is also dealing with a more general experience than just the experience of that painting. That general experience is not only the experience of a storm, it's also the experience of how to paint a storm, how to represent a storm. What is a storm in the visual, in the pictorial tradition? What does it make? What does it produce in the pictorial tradition? A storm. And what it produces, a storm, in the pictorial tradition, it's very simple, very clear, and you get it in many works of Turner. It's blinding. If you are caught in a storm, you don't see anymore what happens. You are lost, visually lost. You are blinded. The experience is to become a blind man. Blind man, you remember? Blind man, what it is. And in Turner's painting, the corollary of it, the balance of that experience of being blinded by a storm is the experience of the sun. As you know, he's obsessed by the sun, the power of the sun. I mean, for Turner, is as one belief. It is a kind of very archaic, very profane belief in the sun, in the power of the sun. But the sun, as you know, you cannot stare. You know that it's dangerous. You cannot. You just cannot. Physiologically, you cannot. And it was this idea to stare at the sun. With the risk, the peril of being blinded. Voilà. So you see how much a tableau can be a document of experience, and how much this experience is the experience of painting itself as a gaze, as an experience of the gaze. If we have time, we shall develop it with Lacan, because from what I know, he's the only theoretician who really addressed seriously all this. And many people did it after him, but he was the first one to really address all this. What is so interesting is that, as very usual, the artist addressed these problems much before the theoretician. You have it in Turner perfectly. But you see it in Turner thanks to Lacan, not only to Lacan, but to people like Lacan. But you have it already in Turner. It's why art should not be following the discourse. The discourse is very important because it helps you to think, very simply. But as an artist, you must not trust the discourse. Never. And there are too much discourses in the field of art today. Alors, so this is Turner and the document of experience, and you have, and I give you now a second example. Tableau by Jeff Wall called Field Work, but it's not only called Field Work. Look at the length of the title. In that case, you can read it if you want. In that case, the title is as long as a caption. The title is a caption. It's a very interesting point. It's not obvious at all to give a painting as a title the content of a caption. You see why it's so interesting and to be clear about words, to make distinctions. For example, title, caption, or tableau de document, tableau étude, you know, all this. Alors, this tableau is a reconstruction, an interpretation, in the way the painting by Turner was an interpretation. Jeff Wall saw something like that. All of his, I mean, not all of them, most of his tableaux are reconstructions and not deconstructions of things seen. This idea of things seen, choses vues, is very important. There is a major confusion about Geoffroy, which everybody is fascinated by the technological ability and his way of staging and so on. Okay, but it's not the important point. It's completely secondary. What is so important in his way of working is that he has the ability to interpret, to reconstruct and interpret a visual experience. The experience of something he saw. That's what is very interesting in his case. It means that behind the tableau, behind the complexity of the tableau, and I'm using this word complexity the way I did yesterday, with the model of nature behind, so you have the complexity of the tableau. Okay, this complexity is, and we, for example, if we start to describe this tableau in all these details, I tell you it takes 20 minutes. We shall not do it, but it takes 20 minutes. So, because it's full of details, it's a tableau which took him months. It's not just a snapshot. So you have the complexity of the tableau. But. This complexity is referred to the complexity of the world, of nature, and of things seen, of things he had the experience of it, of. It doesn't mean, of course, that the complexity of the tableau can be reduced to the complexity of the experience. But the complexity of the tableau cannot be totally separated from the complexity of experience. Okay?